I'm going to call up our next guest here on the Livestream Lounge, which is our final guest of this morning session, and that's Sam Cappione, the Vice President and General Manager of Speakeasy Ales and Lagers. Sam, welcome.
Well, glad to be here, Chris.
And yeah, Sam, Speakeasy Ales and Lagers was a brand that we thought was no longer going to be around just a couple months ago. I think we even had a headline that suggested that it was shutting down, and then you and a partner, Sess, came in and saved the company, saved the brand. Talk to us about that process and what it's been like to save such an iconic brand like Speakeasy in San Francisco.
Well, as most people know, we sold Speakeasy at the distributorship. So we knew what kind of brand strength it had, and we thought it was just a shame to have a brand like that go away. And it looked like it was going away.
There we go.
That was very nice of him.
So the brand looked like it was going away, and you guys came in and you saved it. Now you're reviving it. You're bringing it back to market. I mean, it never really left the marketplace, but are you planning to do anything different with it? What do you plan to change? What are you going to do with Speakeasy?
We're going to supply the wholesalers with beer.
That's something they've been asking for, I imagine.
The one thing we're not going to do is change anything that has to do with branding or the liquid. Sure. That remains the same. That's important because it was good.
Yeah.
And so our job is to take what was done before us and fill in the gaps that were left behind. One of them, having enough financial well-being to make it work.
Yep.
Second is continually learning.
Yeah.
And third is, meeting the complexities of the marketplace. So, but first and foremost is working with those distributors, those independent distributors that sold the beer before.
Yep.
And we've gotten a very warm welcome so far. So that's I feel fortunate.
That's great to hear. You've been in the business for a while, and I had in my notes that you've been in distribution, or at least on the distribution side, for 23 years, and that's wrong. You informed me last night that that's wrong, that you actually you got your start at a family distributorship, your own family's distributorship for about 6 years, so almost 30 years on the distribution side of the business. You're bringing a lot of knowledge to the table here to turn this Speakeasy brand around. Why not just start your own brand? If you have all that knowledge of the beer space, why go out and repurchase a distressed brand like Speakeasy versus starting something totally new?
It was simple. The brand was still relevant in its home market. It had, after 20 years, it was still relevant, which is amazing. And I was in the distribution business for 30 years. What I know is what I don't know. I don't know how to create a brand. I don't know how to brew a brand, but I do know how we can get it to market. So it was a no-brainer. And like I said earlier, it would have been a shame to see that go away. So rather than start a brand, it's very hard. What these guys have done in the past and are doing right now is extremely hard. Starting something from scratch, developing the brand and getting it out there, and then following up with distribution, et cetera, is a big feat. We feel that we had a brand. It was relevant. It wasn't losing ground because of its relevancy. It was losing ground because they couldn't get enough beer to the wholesalers. Due to
what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge now moving forward?
Building the relationships with the distributors. I'll say that 3 or 4 times during this thing. They are the key.
Yeah.
And also giving the consumers back the beer that they had before, making sure that it's available. So working with the distributors side by side, one tap at a time, one placement at a time is what our model will be. And showing them that, A, we can get them the beer on time. We're consistent at doing that. The beer is exactly the same beer as it was before. We've hired back everyone that was there when it was at the end, and we plan on hiring back more.
That's
so
awesome.
we think that's important. And lastly, making things work maybe a little smoother.
Yeah.
And coming from the distributor side, I really know what they're looking for, so we'll try to give them that.
Interesting. When you guys were finalizing the process for Speakeasy, did you take a step back and say, and do we really want to be doing this? Like, is this something we want to get into? Because you mentioned the sort of wholesaler relationships and having to build those, and I imagine that you're going to have to rebuild a whole bunch of relationships in the trade with suppliers and with retailers and with customers as well. So I'm curious to know, like, did you guys ever pause and say, well, is this something we really want to go through with?
Yes. Throughout the whole process. The process itself is interesting. It's a little bit different than a regular mergers or acquisition. You still do some of the same things, the due diligence work.
Sure.
But you do it in a much shorter time frame.
Sure.
And you're buying it similar to a house as is. So everything you're buying is as is. So you're vetting all that, and then at the end you're saying, well, okay, based on that, we've got to make a decision. And that was difficult. But you do it the same way. You go and you meet the people. So I got a chance to meet those people that I hired, and what did they feel about the business, and while you're looking at the machinery and the brands and everything else. And then it was interesting right up to the final hour. It was a decision process, but we felt strongly that the brand strength over 20 years would carry us, and that we hopefully could add a little bit from the distribution side.
So it's worth the investment, both of time and money, is essentially what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, even as the category is slowing, or growth within the category is slowing, and even as there's 5,300 plus breweries now competing, you still think this is the right sort of next step for you guys in your professional careers?
We're betting on it.
Sam, you're a man of few words, but they're good ones. You select them carefully. You're very deliberate with what you're telling our audience.
We do recognize the complexity. We lived in that world. We had 15 craft suppliers, craft brewers, when we were at Horizon Beverage. So we knew, on top of having Anheuser-Busch, on top of having Constellation. So we know about the complexity of what's happening in the business from a distributor end, and we feel that that we can, by starting with San Francisco and the Bay Area first, going to the rest of Northern California, then Southern California, and then onward. So do things in a very methodical manner, rather than let's throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and what is the plan to, you mentioned some of those larger brands and wholesalers that have 15, 20, 30 different craft brands that they're trying to sell. For Speakeasy, now that you guys are in complete control of it, how are you going to work your way up that list in terms of mind share and attention? What's the secret to getting attention from a wholesaler, having been in the wholesale business for 30 years?
I'll tell you in about a year.
You're going to see it from the other side now.
I am going to see it from the other side, but I did spend some time working for Widmer and CBA back in the day.
Yep.
So, and we were a very small part of the distributor's portfolio then, even smaller than craft is today. And so, what I learned while I was doing that was that if you show up and you work side by side with them, you'll gain their respect. So you work with them rather than tell them, and or rather than just ship them beer and don't send anybody to the marketplace.
Yeah.
So we're going to back that up with people in the marketplace working side by side.
That is a great place to end on, a great piece of advice. If you show up and you do the work with them, the results should speak for themselves, hopefully.
Yeah.
Sam, best of luck with the Speakeasy brand. It's going to be interesting to watch you turn that thing around.
Thank you, Chris.
Cheers.